Hello and welcome to Taking the Leap. I'm Caryn Saitz. I'm your host, and I'm really excited today to have Joanna Pineda with me. She is the CEO and, as she said, the chief troublemaker at Matrix Group International. So, welcome, Joanna.
Hey, so glad
Hi.
to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited. I actually met Joanna about a month ago through a mutual acquaintance, and we had several great conversations. So I'm really excited for you to meet her. And in my first conversation with Joanna, I found out that she actually started Matrix Group International about 23 years ago. So being a CEO in the tech world, and having done that for 23 years is a pretty good track record, and not the usual. I don't think there were that many women that became CEOs and started their own web development company that long ago. So tell us a little bit about how you created your dream business, because this is your dream business today, isn't it?
It is my dream business. And I'll tell you, Karen, there are days when it's not my dream business because there are always ups and downs with any business. And there's
Hmm.
always, things that you wish that were different.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, I started the company in 1999 because I was working for another firm and the firm got bought. There were, not really psyched about the new ownership. There was some squabbling between some of the board members. And I said, I don't really want to be part of this. And so I was part of the, executive team at that point, but I didn't really want to be part of that. And so what I did was I left. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? And it was my sister actually who said, hey, you were running this other firm. What do you think about starting your own business? She said that if you could do it, for this other, company, why not try for yourself? And she said, if it doesn't work out, then you can always look for a job and you already know how to do that. And at the time, this was 1999. I mean, it was like this big, .com explosion. And there weren't a lot of women. I think there were women kind of thinking about going into the web, but there certainly weren't a lot of women CEOs, women business owners. And to be honest, Karen, there still aren't today. At one
Right.
point, there was a kind of a group of us, and I think I met a bunch of them through a group here in DC called DC Web Women. And there were a whole bunch of us. We'd run into each other, and many of them have actually closed up shop, or they've sold, or they just decided to do something different. And even to this day, here it is, 2022, I feel like, my God, where are the women? Where are the women business owners? Where are the women developers?
Right.
Where are the women front end developers? I don't know where you are.
But you're looking for them, right?
Always looking for them. I personally always try to be helpful to other women who are starting their own business, because there have been so many women who are helpful to me. I always try to be helpful and be a mentor to women who, are kind of thinking about advancing their careers, who want to go into a technical field, because I think that maybe women just don't get encouraged enough. And I actually have seen it with my own boys. I see
Hmm.
their girlfriends, kind of with their own journeys, and at some point they just start to drop off, and it's really, really discouraging.
So at 23 years ago, what were the resources and who was your support to just get off the ground? Because was it scary? I mean, did you kind of have a plan in terms of what you were going to do?
You know, it was scary, but thank goodness I had a tiny mortgage. And I think that made a difference. And I had a lot of savings. And I had this really amazing network. I had my sister who said, why don't you think about starting this business? I
Hmm.
had a very good, girlfriend who ran another business, Loretta. And she said, why don't you come do this webinar with me and maybe you can make some contacts? And I did, and I ended up getting a client out of it. The DC Web Women community here in the DC area was incredibly supportive. I think all my initial staff came from DC Web Women. There were enough women who said, wow, this is kind of unusual. This is interesting. Working for
Hmm.
a woman-owned tech firm, I'll join you, even though I didn't have a lot of money, didn't necessarily have any track record. I had a man who I actually knew through grad school. He was a few years ahead of me, and he said, look, I'll help you raise money. There were just so many people along the way who were so helpful to me.
And that got you off the ground.
It got me off the ground.
And today, tell us a little bit about how large you are. I know you have a pretty good sized staff, and where are you?
So I'm based out of Arlington, Virginia, and today I have 40 people. So we're still a small firm. But what's nice about 40 is it's big enough for us to be able to do big and interesting projects, right? And we can have multiple big and interesting projects going on at the same time. It's a good size too because, our clients, I still know, all of the clients. That might change, and I certainly don't get involved with every project, but I still, at this point, know, almost all of the clients. But we also can take on really varied projects because of that size.
And
And
what
we're
kind
all
of
over the world, by the way. Like the staff
That's
are all
great.
over. I have employees everywhere.
So, and what's the focus of the company? What kinds of things do you develop, and who are your clients? Because I know, when we chatted, there was something really interesting about the nature of your clients, and that you're involved in a lot of male-dominated firms, and where a lot of the industry, actually industries, is really the truth. So, tell us a little bit about your clientele and the types of work that you guys do.
About 95% of our clients are associations and nonprofits, not exclusively, but really primarily. So we work with trade associations, professional societies, and nonprofits. What we do is we help those organizations increase their membership and generate more money. So whether it's, we need more companies that are members or we need more individuals who are members, that's what we help them do. And then we help them increase engagement. We want more people attending our conferences. We want more people purchasing our publications. We want more companies participating in our trade show. We want more people participating in our webinars. So it's really all about helping these organizations that in almost all cases are membership type organizations, and then increasing revenue and increasing engagement. And, speaking to the kind of the different industries, so we have a large footprint within our client base in construction. So specifically in union construction. So we work with the labor organizations, the locals and the international unions. We work with the management organizations, the trade associations and the local execs who negotiate a lot of the contracts. We also work with what are called joint funds, and they're like joint benefit funds, where the labor and management get together to provide benefits. And this is 100% male dominated because we work in electrical, sheet metal, mechanical, painting, iron workers. And, it's not unusual for there to be one woman in the room, and that's me, or maybe one of my project managers or one of my directors.
Right.
But so we also do a lot of work in healthcare and a lot of work in food retail. Those tend to be a little bit more varied, but even then, certain sectors just tend to be a lot more men.
So you found yourself at the table with completely male dominated. And how did you navigate that? And, here you are, you're the CEO, you're coming in, you're, ready to do work for them and with them, you're pitching them, you're doing business development, and then hopefully you're getting all of these clients. How does it work? What's your technique that allows them to hire you and to be comfortable at the table?
I think this is not anything that's going to be new or earth-shattering to most women professionals. I think that what I bring and what my team brings is extreme competence. So I go into the room very prepared, very competent, and very knowledgeable. And I think that what happens is, ultimately, if an organization really wants to go for the best firm, the extreme competence will win out. Tell you a story. This was many, many years ago now, but obviously still in my lifetime. This was maybe 10, 12 years ago. And I was pitching a client in Alabama. And it was a construction organization. And I brought a designer with me, a woman. And so we walked in, we were introduced to the board. And I kid you not, the vice president said, well, we don't normally let girls in the clubhouse, but today let me introduce Joanna and Rona. And we pitched, and we got the work. So even, that comment notwithstanding, I think we came in with such knowledge and competence that they chose us anyway. Caryn, we were at the airport and I said to my designer, I said, Rona, did that offend you? And she said, no. And she said, did it offend you? And I said, maybe a little bit, but in the end, they chose us. And that's what matters. And I think that you kind of have to figure out what your end goal is. And in my case, it was winning the business. And, that's what we ended up doing.
And so over the years, you've really become known in the industry, I think, as a leader.
Yes.
And I think that's, that puts a different set of pressures on you as a woman. Can you speak to that sort of challenge, or, tell us, does it feel different? Does it change? Does it, how do you navigate it going forward?
It's a good question. I think that many of our clients are referrals. So they'll say, Joanna runs a really organization. She's got really good staff. So I have a couple of, actually many staff who have been with me for a very long time, both men and women. And so they have established their own reputations for being very, very good, very knowledgeable, very competent. So I think how you navigate it is you look for those referrals, and then those referrals are going to come from other people in the industry, and they might be other male-dominated organizations. But again, you come with extreme competence and knowledge and and experience, and that's how you navigate it.
That's great. And so I know as you grow your firm, you are looking to hire other women and give them those opportunities. Why do you think that within the industry there are so few women? And I'm hearing that it's declining rather than growing. So what do you see as maybe some of the reasons for that? And how do you feel like you can help encourage women to, to go into those industries and to go into, technology and web development and all of those areas?
So what I see is among the technical ranks, that it's harder and harder to find women. It used to be that even in the 90s and early 2000s, I would have women developers. It was never 50-50, but I'd have women developers, I'd have women front-end developers. And today I don't have any women front-end developers, and I don't have any women, programmers or developers. I have a good mix in my management ranks, and certainly a good mix among my project managers and my sales team, for example, or my administrative team, but not among the strict technical team. Why is that? I think that maybe within those industries, we still have the stereotypes of them being male dominated, that it's harder for women. I'll tell you something that I have seen, and that is, when my son was, I think, entering middle school. And I remember reading an article about how middle school is really important for boys and girls, because that's when the math starts to get a little bit hard, not super hard, but just hard enough that you can't just rely on pure ability, right? You actually have to, learn a little bit, and you don't walk into that math class knowing it out of hand. And I would have girls say, Mrs. Pineda, I'm not good at this. And I'd say, well, of course you're not good at it. Like, you've never done this before. Versus the boys just kind of, dove in. And I'm wondering if maybe even by the time they're in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, for the things that are technical, I think the quote smart girls, if it doesn't come naturally to them, then they decide they're not good at it. Versus I think maybe with the boys, who knows what the thinking is. I read a lot about this, and I still don't have answers, but I certainly have seen that with the girls, that they tend to leave behind the STEM fields, even though they'll say, man, I loved math and science, but somehow they decide that they're not good. And then I just feel like it's this huge tragedy, because of course you're not good. You're in middle school. Of course you're not good. You're in high school.
Right. So as a role model, do you go back and work with organizations to help young women, or, go into those fields? Is that something that you do?
So I try to do as much as I can. One thing that I have been doing for the past few years is there is something called senior experience here in Alexandria, Virginia, where seniors will actually spend a couple of years working at companies to get some real life experience. And Caryn, I'll tell you, it's been hard to get girls. So
Wow.
this year, for example, I specifically reached out to the local high school and I said, I would like girls. And they promised me 2 girls and they didn't end up showing
Wow.
up versus like the boys showed up. So I ended up with 6 boys, but no girls, despite my reaching out.
Interesting.
Now, I'll tell you the other thing that I do though, is I will specifically reach out through my network and through my staff to say, hey, we've got summer internships. And if there are any girls in the mix or young women,
Hmm.
please send them our way. So there's a friend of my son, her older sister actually is majoring in computer science at William and Mary. And I said, you have got to reach out to me in the fall. And I am sorry for the noise. Let me tell the 11-year-old that the Nerf gun is making too much noise. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
He
It's
got a
all good.
new Nerf gun that shoots something, I don't know, little water pellets, and he's all excited about it.
Hey, it's the summer, it's vacation,
I know.
But what's interesting is during the pandemic or at the beginning of the pandemic, you chose, because you're working with these associations and memberships and all of that, something struck you and you chose to pivot some of your focus as a company. Can you share a little bit about what you've done and how that's changed the mix of the products and services that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was February, right, when we started hearing about this thing. I don't know
Right.
that we even called it COVID yet, or
No,
maybe we were
coronavirus, I think.
coronavirus. Yes, is what it was. And I remember actually, I'm in a CEO group, and I remember going to a meeting and asking, the other CEOs in the room, hey, what do you think about this coronavirus thing? And almost everybody except one other CEO said, this will blow over, give it a few weeks.
Hmm.
Kind of kept going. And I said, I think this is actually going to be bad. My brother is married to a woman who grew up in China, and she actually said, this is going to be bad. The news isn't really covering it, but my parents say that it's really bad. So I went to my VP and I said, I have an idea. I think if this thing happens, then if we start shutting down like they are shutting down in China, I think this is going to be very, very bad for our clients who hold conferences and meetings. And so I went to my VP and I said, can I borrow a couple of people? I want to do a 1-day sprint. Now, if you're at all familiar with software development, a sprint is where you have a fixed amount of time and you try to figure out what you can do in that 1 day. You kind of do a lot of planning and you say, this is what we're going to do. And it's part of the agile methodology. So
Hmm.
I borrowed 2 people and I said, what can I get done in a day? And in a day we had some prototypes that you could look at and kind of click through. Showed it to some clients and they said, wow, Joanna, this looks really interesting. And I went to my VP again and I said, hey, can I have another day? Because Caryn, I don't actually own resources in my company. I'm basically running the company and I'm in charge of sales, but I don't actually have anyone reporting to me who actually does things, right? The developers, the designers,
Right.
etc. So she said, yes, Joanna, you can have some resources. So we did a little bit more work and then we did a little bit more work. And then when the country shut down, I said, we have got to accelerate this. So I borrowed even more resources. And at this point, Caryn, clients were starting to cancel projects. So I actually had a couple people who were on the bench and I was very nervous. I thought, oh my God, is this the end of my business, right?
So let me clarify. A lot of these programs and events and conferences and summits were in person. And so what was getting canceled were, at that point, you weren't doing so many virtual programs, correct? You were doing
So
more in person.
yeah, so we're not an event planning company, we're a tech company. So what we were
Right.
doing for our clients is we would help them with the website for the conference. We would help them with the sign up forms for the conference. We would help them through direct marketing to get people registered for the conferences. But we're not actually the people organizing the in-person
Right.
conferences. But our clients, many of them derive a great deal of their revenue from these in-person conferences. And I said, this is going to be bad. So we said, and I had this, we knew about virtual platforms, but we weren't happy with them. We actually looked around, did a bunch of research and said, look, can we help our clients actually use some of these platforms? And Caryn, to be honest, we didn't like them. They were too generic. They were too restrictive. You couldn't brand them. The session types weren't that interesting. The engagement in them wasn't very good. So I said, I think we can do better. And that's when we started work really in earnest on what is now Bespeak. And we got lucky. We started to get requests for proposals from associations, and we got our first account or first project from an existing client that's done a ton of work with us. And they basically said, look, we know your product isn't ready, but we believe in you. You've never let us down. We've got this really important conference that's going to be virtual in July, and we know that you can do it. So it was a huge leap of faith for them, and we weren't going to let them down. That was our very first conference in July 2020, and then, kind of it's taken off from there.
So,
and it was big changes for
right.
For us in so many ways.
And these are large conferences, and so now you've created this event platform that I don't want to say mirrors, because I full disclosure, I have had a demo of it, so really
Yes,
cool.
yes.
And because I do a lot of events as an event strategist and planner, I wanted to see the program and the platform and how that might fit in, for my clients. But these are really large programs, and
Yes.
you've created a platform that allows them to do a virtual conference and bring together a lot of the major components of that conference. And yes, there are many platforms out there, but what's really nice is that yours really pulls together so many of the elements that many of the nonprofits and also large trade associations need in order to keep growing their memberships, which, during the pandemic has been a challenge, because they're doing it for networking, or why do you join these organizations? It's for the people that you meet and for the learning that you take back to your organization. So they needed a way to continue to grow that. And I think you've pulled together something that allows them to maximize the learning at the same time as maximizing the networking aspect and the social aspect of the program, because that's the biggest challenge. I know as an event person, how do you encourage and how do you strategically give them the platform to do that networking? So can you talk a little bit about how you've sort of brought together the exhibition area and the sponsor areas and the ability to socially network virtually?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for taking the demo, and thanks for the kind words. We wanted to be very intentional about the experience. I mean, in the end, we're a design and development shop that really cares very much about the user experience, and we were intentional about mapping what we call the attendee journeys. The registration, when you're going from the email to the virtual conference, when you go from session to session, when you go from session to the trade show, when you go to send a message to someone in the platform, how do we make those interactions and those journeys feel really smooth? And how do we make those engagements very meaningful? So Caryn, if you think about it, this is something I learned from a client a long time ago. When you go to a conference, you want to learn something, you want to be part of the conversation, and you want to make a friend. And if those three things happen, you feel like, oh, this is a great conference.
Right.
If all you did was learn something, you attended sessions, you went back to your room, you probably could have done that on YouTube, right? You could have done that, with a recorded session. So why fly all the way across the country? Because you want to be part of the conversation. You want to be part of the serendipitous meetings,
Water
at the lunch
cooler
table.
moments, right?
Absolutely. Or you want to experience some interesting things, because these events often have very iconic events, right? Like when I went to a conference in Salt Lake and there was some big, fabulous outdoor thing. Or I went to a conference in San Diego and there was some fabulous event at the San Diego Zoo. Or it's a way for me to touch base with a whole bunch of partners that I normally don't get to see.
Right.
So it's like a little bit of a reunion. So we said, how do we create those types of opportunities? So we focused on giving clients the ability to have really good education, but also we wanted to give them ways to create connections between exhibitors and attendees, between sponsors and attendees, and between attendees. So what we developed are actually different ways to actually hold your exhibition. And then really during the pandemic and really into 2022, we're constantly experimenting with our clients about ways to bring exhibitors to the attendees instead of the attendees going to the exhibitors, because that's the model, right? The model
Right.
is previously you have the attendees go to the trade show hall. So now it's how do we get the exhibitors to come to the attendees? And you do that through educational sessions, you do it through sponsorships where maybe they get a chance to facilitate some of these discussions. You do it through branding, you do it through micro-learning, for example, is a really good thing that's worked. And then the other thing that we wanted to do was create different types of ways that people can interact within the platform. So in Zoom, you have the breakouts. Well, we certainly have breakouts, but we have something called morning coffee, where when you click the button, you get paired up with either a random person or random persons, depending on the configuration. So you go into a video room where you get paired up with one person or four people. And then when that ends, you get paired up with another one person or four people, depending on the configuration. So that's one thing that we do, in addition to other things like we've got a networking
Right.
lounge, all those things.
But making networking intentional is really the way to go. And it's not random anymore. And that's what's really great about, the perspective that you've taken on this. So kudos.
Caryn, you're absolutely right. I think that when we have attended conferences in the past, there's the educational sessions and the entertainment. And then the networking was intentional in the sense of there are opportunities for you to network with folks. There's the opening reception, there's the closing reception, maybe
Right.
there's there's the gala. But what we haven't been intentional about is matching people and specifically giving them opportunities to get matched up maybe with people who have like-minded interests or maybe who have something that I need. So you're absolutely right. I think what has been maybe the new thing to come out of this is intentional ways of bringing people together so that you're almost thinking about how do I make sure that every single person who's an attendee who wants to, right? Because not everybody necessarily wants this, who wants to has an opportunity to get connected.
And I think, when we look at silver linings of the pandemic and our ability to reach out to people that aren't next to us anymore, I'm a firm believer in ongoing having virtual programs and events and learning events and conferences and summits for many, many reasons. Number one, because of the advancements in technology, number one, and the ability to bring people together like that, to match them, to find those opportunities and be intentional from the from the person who's putting on the program. So I think that's one. And also cost. And although it's not inexpensive, there's no way that you would have these people who are living in all over the world be able to come together. The cost of bringing them together is really expensive. So the fact that you can do that virtually is pretty amazing. And so many people have built large audiences that they never would have had we not had this experience with the pandemic, and really bringing people together, using all of the virtual technology platforms that are out there. So I think that's a great plus and a great silver lining, and that's come out of everything that we've gone through. So looking to the future, right?
Hey, can I just say one thing about that?
Absolutely. Please do.
So Caryn, I have three kind of personas in mind when I think about virtual. And if we go back to strictly in person, we almost leave them behind again. I think about, for example, China's still locked down. So for my professional society clients that often have a lot of people coming in from China, are you basically saying goodbye to them? Because they're not coming or they can't come at this point.
Right.
Or what about my sister who has MS, who can't travel? Who's under strict orders to really not be going out because something could literally kill her. Or I think about one of my very close friends who's a very, very busy anesthesiologist who actually said, for the first time ever, I was able to attend my association's annual conference because it was virtual and I could pick and choose the sessions that I wanted. So do we turn our back on those folks who, for the first time are able to really participate? And if it's a great experience, not just in terms of education, but because maybe you made a couple of new friends, how do we say goodbye to them, for them?
I think you don't. And I think that it's, there's this comment about, well, when we go back to where we were, right? Or when we
When
go
we go
back
back to normal.
to normal or pre-pandemic, I don't believe personally that there is that normal or that there will be that pre-pandemic. I think that there are going to be pieces of it where, people do hybrid programs and they also do virtual programs and they
Mhm.
also do in-person programs. And I
Yes.
think pick and choose for the program that you need to do for the audience that fits well, and then look at how do you want to, as an organization, as a company, as a trade association, how do you then go out and and present your information and bring your members together, because there's absolutely so many new ways that are which are really great, and they're great for the organization and they're great for the member. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to continue to help you grow as a company. So I think
100%.
having the ability to do that and to continue, I'm sure that you're getting better at it. And I'm sure that your program continues to grow and make changes from all the learning, and from the input from the people that are attending and using, the program. So I think that we have even further to go as we move forward, which is a great thing. So I'm going to flip back a little, though, to where you are today as a woman CEO in the tech industry. And what do you see for the future? Do you see, because we don't have them coming up in the ranks, that it's going to be fewer and fewer? Do you see it as, as growing, or just really not not gonna change, and it's just going to continue to be a challenge? And also, is there equal pay for a woman in this industry, or is it
Uh,
better because there are so few?
I don't know that it's better because there's so few. Because even if you take a standard organization, I think
Right.
you're going to have a kind of a, what do you call that? A range for a senior developer or a front
Mm-hmm.
end developer. I think that we are definitely seeing equal pay, just because if you're doing the work,
Right.
then you're going to get the pay. Now, one thing that I think definitely hurts women is if they're coming in later or they're coming in with less experience, for example, then they might, get hurt a little bit. But I think that the pay issue, I don't know that it's 100%, but I think that we've made really great strides there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that the talent shortage on the technical side is so extreme. For I think it's hard to find women and men on the technical side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we're going to have to find a way to fix this, and we're going to have to find a way to really, make sure that young women are really coming into the field. And I have high hopes that the universities are making great strides there. I mean, more women go to college than,
Sure.
than men. I think that, different nonprofits are really, making great strides there. And then I think it becomes an economic thing. I think that because jobs in the technical fields are so lucrative and so, in demand, I'm hoping that the law of supply and demand just means that more women, hopefully in the future, will say, you know what, I can have a really good career here.
So one of the things that you said to me was, one of the things as anyone could do going forward is to become as technical as they could, and to really learn how to use and to understand technology. Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a book by Kevin Kelly called The Inevitable that I love very much. And he actually says in the future, we will each have our own robot. And our ability to program that robot to help us with our personal lives or with our professional lives will actually then impact the success of our careers and our personal lives. And that's obviously maybe in the future, and that's kind of extreme. But I think it points to the more technical you are, probably the more successful you will be in your future. So I think in almost any position these days, whatever it is, right? Operations, supply chain, marketing, communications, whatever it is, even being, certainly being an engineer, the more technical you are, meaning the more facility you have with the technical tools, the more successful you're going to be, because that's where the new stuff is. I mean, I tell communications folks, And I tell project managers, the more technical you are, just the more valuable you become. So if a woman, for example, maybe is more interested in, say, management or project management, the more technical she becomes, my God, she becomes gold. She becomes worth her weight in gold, because she's someone who can manage projects and can communicate, and hopefully has a good grasp of technology and can explain those technical concepts to non-technical folks. So I tell everybody, you don't necessarily have to be strictly technical, but the more technical you are, the more valuable you become.
So how, if you weren't technical and say you are in marketing or operations, how do you suggest that somebody go about learning, or where should they start? What can they do to become better at it and more knowledgeable?
That's a good question. So let's take someone who's in marketing, right? Someone who is in charge of messaging for their organization and maybe is in charge of, say, some email marketing or social media. So you might say, well, how technical do you need to be? Well, the more technical you are, the better you are at understanding the different tools, right? The more open you are to using different tools. So you might be, here's a simple example. You might be posting on social manually, but then you figured out that, oh my God, there are some amazing tools in HubSpot that will help me do my job better. And it probably took you a few YouTube videos and a training class to figure out how to use the tools in HubSpot, but you got really good at it and now you're saving time. What if you took the time to become certified in Google Analytics, so that you're not just looking at the analytics and figuring out, kind of what's significant to your team, but now you're an expert at the analytics and you know what's possible with the analytics, and you can really take those numbers and do some deep analysis. So those are simple examples where you're a lot more technical. And let me tell you, the person who's amazing at Google Analytics, or analytics in general, and not just Google, but like maybe CRM analytics, with conversion analytics, with pipeline analytics. I mean, that person is so valuable because they can spot the trends and they can really guide the decision makers or make their own decisions that are much better because they're data driven. So those are two simple examples.
Yeah, so it can be just a very simple focus of, like, it doesn't have to be overall technology. It could be one specific area that you become, not necessarily an expert, but really proficient at, understanding how to use the tools and how to understand them. You're going to add a lot of value to your organization.
Yeah. So say you're a project manager and your company is using, I don't know, they're using Basecamp, or maybe they're using Jira. And you took the time to get really good at Jira. And now your projects are the most well managed and your team is the happiest, and you're getting the most productivity out of your team because you know how to really kind of, set up those tasks. That's being technical, but using it in service of maybe your main task, which is to manage projects. If you're someone who's in membership, for example, man, you really took the time to get very technical and very deep with your CRM. And now you can make reports, and you don't need to depend on someone who knows a whole lot of SQL, because you can run your own reports and you can do your own analysis. All that stuff just means you are so valuable because you're developing your own insights and you're able to make better decisions. Leadership is going to like sit up and pay attention and say, that Caryn, where did she get that insight that it's this segment of the population that donates more, that it's this segment of the population that tends to drop out at this mark, in their membership journey.
And that can happen within an organization or within your own organization, whether or not you're at any level in the organization. You could be at, startup level, mid-level,
Absolutely.
or you could be an entrepreneur, and, and that is an expertise that you bring someone into your organization to master, or you yourself master. So I think those comments really run across the board, no matter, where you are in an organization. So just flipping back a little bit, as my final question to you is, what do you wish someone had told you when you started, to create this business? And what would have helped you along the way to really, do it faster, to do it better? Are there things that you wish you knew that you would share with someone today so that they would be able to learn from those valuable takeaways?
One thing that I wish I had learned much, much earlier in my journey was the different levels and types of funding that you can have in a business. Because funding allows you to scale. And there's different types of funding. There's obviously organizations that are self-funded. They make enough money that they can then fuel their growth. That's actually the hardest, and that's been mostly our growth, and it's been the hardest. We've had other types of funding where we got a bank loan, we got a line of credit, we got some PPP money, and that actually helped us, for example, with our Bespeak product. I wish that I knew much earlier in my journey about the different types of funding, when you use it, and then, like, what are the trade-offs with different types of funding? If you take an investor, what are the trade-offs? And what are the different types of investors? If you take, private equity versus VC, or even just angel money, or just like friends and family money, what are the trade-offs, and how can it help you grow your business? That's probably a big regret of mine, that much earlier in the business, I didn't take money. I wish I had done it.
Interesting. So you bootstrapped and so yeah, that's an important thing, because I think especially for women, I think that now that there are women-run VC companies and private equity, but I think starting out there weren't as many. There's also a lot of organizations that help women grow now that didn't exist before. So I think that's definitely something to think about. I think a lot of women just think about, all right, let me get this out there, and they're not thinking about how is it really going to get funded going forward, and how can I help make it grow. So that's an important aspect.
Yeah, and Caryn, the other thing, let me just say this if you don't mind, is I think that women, how there's research that shows that, like, men will apply for a job if they're like 30% qualified, versus a woman will apply for a job when she's like 70% qualified or something. And I think that happens with women business owners and their funding as well, where women feel like, well, how could is this worth funding? I certainly have had those thoughts, right? Where I've thought, why would anyone possibly want to invest in my company? And then I hear about some other company that got funded, and I think, really? They got funded? And I think, God bless them, and I'm sure they all deserved it, but maybe I deserved it too, but I didn't believe it. Or I never thought it was even possible. And that's one of my regrets too. So I think that's a gendered thing.
Right. I think that women are more fearful in asking for money. I think it's
100%.
harder for women to, accept their value and to showcase their value to others. And so it's much harder to ask for that money, whether it's the rate of their services or whether it's investment money. I think it works, or whether it's for salary increase. It's been shown that women have a much harder time, asking for that. So I think that's a really valid thought. And also, I think, to your point, it's thinking about, do I want to scale this? And if I am going to want to scale it, how am I going to scale it? Right? Because there's all different aspects of what you need to scale it. So, money is one aspect of it, resources and people are another aspect, and your own, desire and passion and knowledge and all of those other things. Not everybody wants to scale their business, but there are many women run businesses that do scale and that have that opportunity. So I think that's an important aspect. Is this your hobby, or is this really a business that you want to be international and grow? And you've taken this company international, and I think clearly you wanted it to grow. And I think that's an amazing accomplishment. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I look forward to see what the next chapter looks like. I think that you're in it, to continue to grow it. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And anything special you want to share that's on the horizon, or you want to are you going to surprise us?
So, the things that we're working on right now are, to your point about virtual learning, we're working on a new, it's not quite a pivot, but it's maybe like kind of the next generation of our Bespeak product. And it's, how do you create a year-round learning portal that is very engaging and not your usual webinar? So we're working with our clients to reinvent year-round learning, where it's not just the same old, hour-long Zoom webinar. We're also spending a lot of time thinking about, how does micro-learning fit into the education journey for these associations and their members? Because people are really busy. It's hard to get people to pay attention, and it's very, very hard these days to get people to sit down and commit to a 45-minute webinar. So how does micro learning fit into this, and how does gamification fit into this? So those are some of the things we're working on, in addition to, like new technologies. Everything is cloud these days. And we're working with some low code, no code platforms, but ultimately those are just tools to help our clients with the next generation of engagement with their members.
So I think one of the things that I've been thinking about during all the learning during the pandemic was how the universities really are not prepared to teach their students virtually. They may be able to throw a course up there, but they did nothing to help network these kids. I happen to have friends, kids who were over for dinner recently. They had no idea who was in their classes. They had no idea, whether the professors had no idea if they were online or not online, how they were learning. And it was really difficult. It's really difficult for a lot of kids to learn that way. I mean, it's difficult for adults to learn that way as well. But I think it's a really important, I think going forward, there's going to be so much more, micro learning and virtual learning that getting that right is huge. So I look forward to seeing what you're doing, and excited. It's a pleasure getting to know you. It's a pleasure meeting you. It's a pleasure watching and learning about your journey. So thank you so much, Joanna, for being here today. And for anyone that wants to see this, it will be up on YouTube on our channel. Thanks for taking the leap. I think that you do it every day, and you do it with such confidence and competence. And it's really a pleasure. So thanks everyone for being here today. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much, Caryn. This was huge fun. Every time I have a conversation with you, I learn and I have a great time. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.